your mind to climb the hill. It's reconstruction time in Trinidad, so put your shoulder to the wheel, my lad, move on, don't stop till you reach the top. You put a hand and I put a hand and we will see. For big and for small, in no time at all, prosperity. There's no other way to do it. Show your patriotic spirit, unity. Somehow, if Trinidad ever needed you, it's now. Trinidadians, one and all, hear my plea, answer my call. The peace and happiness we had before was lost with everybody fighting war. Let's hope that's done. So move on, upward, come on. You put a hand and I put a hand and we will see. In no time at all, for big and for small, prosperity. There's no other way to do it. Show your patriotic spirit, unity. Somehow, if Trinidad ever needed you, it's now. Political policy and political ties, and rebuild your country before the good name dies. If everyone will learn to play their part, that is enough to make a useful start. Soon we'll have had a better Trinidad. You put a hand and I put a hand and we will see. In no time at all, for big and for small, prosperity. There's no other way to do it. Show your patriotic spirit, unity. Somehow, if Trinidad ever needed you, it's now.
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. East, West, North, South, Central, in Trinidad, or friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web, a pleasant good day to you. Yes, I saw you caught me napping there. Well, of course, it's because of the joy in my heart and the what I consider to be the expectations of a new look and a new programming corridor transformation. You see, it is important that we look at the multiple moving parts that have conjoined, that have been so fragmented in terms of the various aspects of life in Trinidad and Tobago. In other words, to ensure that our contemporary or existential civilization called Trinidad and Tobago is covered where it matters and where the stakeholders have the best to offer in terms of advancing Trinidad and Tobago in the murky waters of hemispheric and international, and I must say, internal geopolitics. Yes, I ascribe geopolitics to be internal as well. You see, it is on that will determine what direction we go in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have seen over the last couple of months or several months since the administration is in office, I talk about the new administration, the Kamala Prasad Bisesa-led UNC coalition of interests. Or put another way, since the debased, the humiliated, the political doldrum resident, and I refer here, of course, to the PNM. Put another way, so instead of saying that since the new administration has come into office, I prefer to say since the PNM has been, of course, unceremoniously defeated and, of course, jettisoned out of office. So I think on both sides, I think it is comprehensive, and the intention or the rationale cannot be questioned. In other words, it is not questionable, and therefore the ambiguity would have been eroded or extracted from it, since we have to be as pellucid as we can, conspicuous as we can, transparent as we can. So that being as it may, yes, I think I should keep that little sparkle of I love you just for a few more moments, because this program tonight is to invite you, one, and to share with you the new direction in which the corridor transformation will be going from tomorrow, Tuesday, the 24th. Let me make sure, yes, the 24th of March. Steering, of course, inexorably to the 28th of April, the anniversary of the victory of the present administration. We're going to do some, what I consider to be not post-mortem. That term suggests that somehow, yes, something has gone, yes, but I don't want it to look as though the gone or the terminus is permanent. So I will say an evaluation of the continuation when the 28th of April would have reached, and of course, moving forward as we take Trinidad and Tobago to the zenith of its ability, making certain that all and sundry, in other words, the cliche, when the UNC wins, the entire country wins, and I must, of course, include and the coalition of interests. All of us will benefit. Yes, there are going to be turbulent times. No home, no building, no initiative, no altruistic effort is achieved without some setbacks, some challenges, and some what I consider to be turbulence. But at the end of the day, because we are in this crucible of national development together, and because we are monofocus, and because all of us have a stake in Trinidad and Tobago, wherever you are, it is critical that the ultimate objective of making Trinidad and Tobago the best it can be for the citizens that have found themselves as resident or call themselves patriots, whatever you want to call yourself. The fact is that Trinidad and Tobago must advance, and all of the foundational, or put another way, all of the cog towards that advancement clearly is being put in place. It is unrealistic. It is not pragmatic it is not what I consider to be reasonable to expect in 1 year or less than 1 year, as some people naively and for mischievous purposes, they don't believe a bit of what they are projecting, that the government will have money, that the situation with the transportation, the economy, the reserves, the Heritage and Civilization Fund, the whole question of crime and criminality. It is impossible to measure any administration, any government in 1 year. I would say the better part of 1 year and a half minimum, I will give a government to begin the process of transformation, dismantling, adjusting, adapting, and then moving forward. Let's see if we can entertain anybody, because I know the phone is giving problems. I should have mentioned that earlier, but let me see if we are lucky tonight. A pleasant good night. Are you hearing me? Pleasant good night. All right, let's try this one here. Pleasant good night. Good night. I'm sure somebody is there. Good night. All right. I know that the phone is giving problems, so I would. Oh, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? I know. All right. So we have to forego the phone calls tonight. If you are listening, we are going to forego the phone calls tonight. Let me just put it up to make certain that everybody knows that there is no phone calls tonight, simply because we are not in a position to engage. Tomorrow night, we hope that overnight all the technical work will be done in order to make certain that we have the benefit of the telephone so that you can make your contribution. Tonight is about information dissemination only, and to tell you about the nature and the new programs that we have in store for you. You notice that Joshua is not here, not yet, but that too will be, adjustments will be made. You see, the old people have a saying, two man rat can't live in the same hole. So I have decided, or we have decided, that Joshua will have his own program earlier, of course, around 5:30, and then I will come on with my program around 7:30, a little earlier, and then of course go right on to 8:30, just about an hour. Take a little more because we have so much to talk about and so much to catch up on. So that's the first adjustment. So by 5:30 tomorrow, Joshua will be, of course, the background will be different and all of that, and he will be, of course, engaging the young people, because we have to make certain that the young people, not only are they the future leaders of the country, but they are in essence stakeholders as well in every form of the word and every construct of the word. They are stakeholders. We have to start there. You see, and it is important too, because we are living in a time when information is so, what I consider to be fluent, is so readily accessible across the various platforms and even by way of different devices, that it is almost, if not impossible, to prevent young people from being exposed to what adults and everybody else would be exposed to. But more importantly, the exposure is so vast, is so wide. In other words, it has been internationalized. And so to escape and say that, all right, I am going to prevent my child from the internet and or Facebook or Twitter well, formerly, no longer Twitter, I think it's X now, but you know where I'm coming from, or TikTok, as the case may be, Instagram, etc. It is an impossibility. Can't work. So we who are policymakers, who are the adults, who are to steer, who are to guide, who are to make certain that the institutions of socialization, whether it be the family, whether it be the schools, whether it be the churches, whether it be the prisons, whether it be the judicial system, etc., etc., we have to be able to adapt and adjust ourselves. It cannot be that you make law to stop somebody from accessing the internet. No. It will be a backward and what I consider to be archaic and Jurassic approach. If any government or any family, any individual should try that, because they will get the information, the young people, one way or another, because it is right around them and readily accessible. Right around them, readily accessible. Wherever they go, whether in the streets, whether they're traveling to and from school, or whether they are in the school, whether they go cinema, whether they go to a football game, recreation, whether they are with their friends, they are going to be exposed, and therefore we have to accept that as adults and as persons who have the reign of responsibility to nurture and to comfort and to direct. We have to recognize that as a pellucid fact. Let me just try to put up something to indicate where we are in terms of the, I want to say that there is no, let me just put up something to suggest that there is no phone calls tonight. No phone calls tonight. Let me see if I can get that organized. In the meantime, of course, let me tell you that the program at 5:30 thereabout with Joshua will include some of his friends will be there. There is a classroom setting within the studio itself here at the resource center here on George Street. And therefore, we're going to have discussions. He's going to invite one or two of his friends to just talk about school business, about recreational sports, etc., about what they would have done in school today. But of course, you know that the Easter vacation is upon us. They will talk all of that. But more importantly, I believe that would be the nascent stage, the beginning stage of course, they recognizing that at the end of it all, they have to take over from the adults. Those who are adults today, they will be the adults of the future, and that they must be more responsible. But more significantly, because they come from a community that is considered to be underprivileged, they are operating in a community that the society deems as a crime hotspot, that violence is, of course, part of the daily menu and experience. And therefore, to try to navigate to those murky waters of sociological decadence, if you want to call it that. And of course, we must be able to tell them, in attempting, of course, to generate the moral compass that they must pursue, then, of course, the role of religion, whether they are whatever denominational precept, concept, dogma that they practice and or adhere to. We must be able to do that as well, so that they have a firm understanding as to their role and responsibility, not as just as young people who must now absorb. That's all they have to do at this stage. Absorb. Adult and prepare, just as how cats are talking about, domestic cats and so on will train their offsprings, just as other animals will train their offsprings to survive and to give them certain skills. Well, in the human scenario, same thing. Of course, we like to believe that we are higher than the animals that are around us, even though they breathe the same air. They have lungs, they have, of course, they have mouth, they have teeth, they have eyes, they have ears, they have nose, etc. They have limbs. But we like to believe that we have dominion over them. No problem. We can indulge. And therefore, we may say that education, as opposed to, if it's a cat, they talk about instinct. Whichever it is, the ultimate goal is to what? Is to survive, and therefore you must have the skills that are required. And while, of course, in the human scenario, there's a greater sophistication. Yes, because of the discovery of division of labor, because people can specialize in one area, but everybody who specializes wherever contributes, of course, to the advancement of the society. So we need, for example, the carpenters, the masons, the mechanics, of course, the technicians. We also need, of course, the doctors, the lawyers, the nurses, as well as, of course, the pilots, and we can go on and on. And then, of course, you have to have leadership. So, therefore, of course, we have the politicians on the one hand, but then we also have, of course, the family, whether you consider to be a matriarchal one or a patriarchal one, meaning that the titular head may be a female, as opposed to the patriarchal, which may be the titular leader being a male, patriarchal, as opposed to matriarchal. All of these are issues that must come to the fore, and whether our young people like it or observe it or are conscious of it, you have to find a way to get them conscious. Just before I came on, for example, my son went to purchase some items, and in fact, I wanted to know, well, if it was a deal, because he told me it was a deal. So I asked him, well, listen, all right, if you paid $20 for 6, that happened just now. You paid $20 for 6 items. How much you actually paid for one, and what you have to do in order to arrive at the answer to that question that was asked. Of course, I was teaching him a bit of, at the same time engaging him, of course, a bit of arithmetic. Then he told me, of course, eventually, well, listen, you have to divide it to find for one. Say, beautiful. Go on the board and deal with it. Of course, he came up with I think 3.2 cents. Sorry, $3.2 for one. Right? So $3 and some cents. And I said, well done. But the fact of the matter is that he's able to tell me that, and of course compare it, because I asked him, what would you normally pay for one in the same place, one of these items, whether there or otherwise? He said, well, $5 for one. So I said, well, right away, you have a profit of just over $2 or thereabout. And therefore, that is a savings or not? And then he says, of course, proudly, it's a savings. But of course, I had to find out from him if the same 6 at $5, how much the 5 will cost, the 6 will cost, sorry, at $5. And of course, what methodology, what mathematical action you will take to make that happen. Well, he said, of course, you have to multiply. And of course, he multiply 6 by the 5, or vice versa, and you will end up, of course, with the answer. And of course, he ended up with 6 5s are 30, and therefore he would have paid $30 for it. So he was correct. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this not to blow my own lapel, but to say that these are the practical things that the young people must become conscious of, and the only people to do that is us, and in the school system, outside of the school system, to make them understand that the real world they are preparing for. And therefore, that skill of division and multiplication, you cannot say, well, mommy forcing me to do something that I don't like. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with survival. It has to do with your ability to make certain that you can put food on the table eventually, that you can take care of your family, and most importantly, with skills like that, you are able to land a job, because people would want skilled people like that in their businesses, because business, of course, whether micro, medium, or large, would require persons who have the ability to add, multiply, take away, and divide. Not so? And so you make the nexus between when they would have become adults, as we have been able to, let's say, generate a foundation when we were younger. They too must go through that cycle and that process in order to make their contribution to society and to themselves, of course. But I thought that those are the kinds of things that will be discussed on Joshua's program, so that they become conscious. I may well want to, or I may have a member of the community just ask questions of these young people, what they would like to be, give some challenges, whether it be mathematical, whether it be their social studies or social issues that every young person ought to be familiar with, or just general knowledge. Whichever, that is the direction in which that will be going. As I said, the background will be different, just as how the background will be different tomorrow evening on the corridor transformation, when you and I now will engage, the adults will engage around 7:30, they're about 7:30, after the kids would have had their fill between 5:30 and, let's say, 6, half an hour to an hour, so 5:30 to 6:30. All right? Yes, thereabout. But of course, we will try to accommodate in such a way that they do not reach home too late, and that they don't come too early, or may be inhibited from coming to the studio simply because they may have chores to do after they would have reached home and maybe have something to eat, etc. So we will work it out. But the fact is that is the direction we are going. Why are we doing all of this? Why? Well, I'll tell you that too often in communities that are considered to be downtrodden, poor, underperforming in school, not being able to adapt to the normative behavior that one would have expected of every citizen, but more importantly, being in the community itself, plays a vital role to generate the paradigm shift or the attitudinal shift that is required for positive advancement, trajectory, accomplishment, and meeting the requirements of amelioration or reducing, if not eliminating, the gang culture, the violence, the gun culture, the belief that you can exhibit criminal behavior in order to survive. We have to demonstrate to them that that is an illusion. And that when they look at cinema, or whether they look at it on their various devices, social media, etc., and they see maybe some movie where the gangsters would have, of course, engaged and be successful, and even if they engage in a bank robbery, or they hijack, or they kill, they must understand that that is a movie, one, and it is not real. And two, those who try to project that in the community, clearly they're watching too much movies. But at the same time, they must understand that if you watch the movie long enough to the ending, you will see invariably everybody gets caught by the police eventually, the institution set up to deal with deviant behavior of a criminal nature. Because there are deviant behavior that are not criminal. So when a child misbehaves because mommy says sit down there and you did not, that doesn't mean that that child is has exhibited some criminal conduct. No. So therefore, of course, so there are conduct that are non-criminal, but requires, of course, a certain amount of discipline that is projected by those who are in authority simply because the child is a child. And in our jurisdiction, you have to be below the age, well, below the age of 18, yes, below the age of 18. So mommy and daddy is responsible. Tomorrow, of course, we will elaborate on certain developments that have passed us because we weren't on air to elaborate. And incidentally, I will finish at minimum, I will finish at 9. We started at 8. All right, so we'll finish at 9. But I want to, of course, point out that since we were not in communication, Maduro has gone. The Americans came in earnest and have left and departed for other engagements in another part of the world, in the Middle East in this particular case. We will look at all of that because it will have implications for Trinidad and Tobago. And that is the only context in which we will be discussing these issues, simply because we want to know how does that trickle down as a benefit to Lavantillians, to East Port of Spain, to Betham, to Silats, to Chumakak, to Mova, to Malik, to Belmont. We would need to know. And if there are benefits to be derived as a consequence of issues that are unfolding in the world, that will bring benefits to Trinidad and Tobago in spite of the negative nature of these issues, then there is a responsibility on the part of Lavantillians and all of these communities to be prepared, lest you get left out again. So I want to say that because it is critical. Because you have on the horizon, lurking in the dark, those who were there before and told us about the largest when the Ukraine war with Russia started, and $8 billion traveled or was deposited into the treasury without having to increase the production of a barrel of oil, just the normal standard amount, but because the price of a barrel itself rose, as is the case today, we were able to get some kind of increase in the amount of financial resources that would have been deposited in our treasury. So we know of that, and we know where that took us, to a most depressive period, where in the abundance of water they take us for fools and we remain thirsty. It was always some draconian measure. I wonder if these people have any kind of conscience. I mean, it is unconscionable to accuse the present administration of harsh and what I consider to be traumatic or draconian measures, which of course none of them, those who are pointing fingers, attempting to deflect away from the fact that the previous 10 years, the PNM in government has done every single thing to oppress, to depress, to emasculate, and to deprive, particularly the downtrodden, already downtrodden in the poor communities. What they have not been short of, however, is talk. And while, of course, they are engaged in oppressing and depressing and engaging in draconian, brutal, barbaric, and evil conduct by way of misappropriation of the resources of the country. They even created a 1%, don't forget that, at the expense of the rest of us. And while I want to accept that there was URP, CPEP, I have to come to that, and the other one that they boast about and try to categorize the present administration as seeing in them that which is in them. What do I mean by that? I'm trying to say here that they see in this administration that which is in the previous administration under the PNM. They try to make it look as though birds of feather flocking together. No. When you look and you extrapolate, you would see. And while I too have a responsibility and a concern, because remember, inside of the draconian measures that they would have adopted, 1% notwithstanding, and of course, doing everything to put pressure on the poor man, whether electricity increase potential, whether it be increase in water rates, whether it be, of course, the imposition of property tax for all and sundry, and we can go on and on in terms of finding ways and means to put pressure on the poor man. I want to say that URP, CPEP, and the reforestation program remained in place. However, those who would have been engaged innocently, those who would have been engaged as ordinary folks within the community and benefiting from that, what I consider to be makeshift or temporary subsistence salary. I want to tell you that while that was happening, there were those who were wreaking havoc, ham, lamb, jam, and living off of you. And while I am of the view that the closing down of these initiatives or those programs should have taken into consideration those elements that really are genuinely not involved in any corruption and no nepotism, no cronyism, no political favoritism, and getting the creme de la creme, getting the ham, lamb, and the jam, that there should have been a mechanism to see whether or not the innocent, the genuine, could have been spared, of that generic decision. Let's go to the line. I don't think we don't have. Hello? In case you are listening, caller who is calling. Oh boy, we don't have no calls tonight. No calls tonight. Let me just put up that. I was trying to multitask whilst I am talking to you to try to put up that. Let me see if I can get it up. Right, okay. Let me see if I can get it up. Let me see if I can get it up. Yeah, so that people wouldn't call tonight. All right, no calls tonight. Please. Yes, of course. Let's see if we can get that organized one time. No calls tonight. No calls tonight, please. All right. Let me just separate that. Right. So I think that should solve that problem. No calls tonight, please. Right. Yes, indeed. So let me just see if I can bring that down a little more so that you can. Let me just deal with that. Yes, indeed. So sorry about that. I am soloing or monoing tonight, but the fact is that I am giving you some preview as to what are some of the issues that we will be discussing from tomorrow, and I hope that the telephone will be up and running. I have my technical people who are looking at that as we speak, so as to make certain that, right, good. So no calls tonight, please. Yes, indeed. So the point I was making is that the closing of those programs, the only difficulty I would have had is that a mechanism was not sought to deal with those persons who are innocent, who really and truly are depending on that subsistence, and it is really becoming a challenge of extreme. Now I want to say this as well, that those who the PNM would make to appear to be dependent on those subsistence program, as important as they would have been, I want to say that the little 3 fortnights in URP, which of course is the staple, is the normal, is the standard for any ordinary person. So I'm being very selective here in terms of who I'm talking about. The mother who has kids to send to school, who has to put food on the table, etc., on a daily basis, who has to pay certain bills, they would have been entitled to 3 fortnights only. And if you put a fortnight at, let's say, $700, 7 trees at 21, so $2,100 for the year. Understand that. Because I want to make the point that those who were wreaking havoc, those who were getting an unfair lump sum of the program, you yourself as one who might have been genuine and say, well, listen, why they categorize, why they lump me into this when I could only get 3 fortnights? And therefore, somehow the government is wicked and evil. I want you to know, if $100 billion is spent on the program and you could only get 3 fortnights at $700, and everybody who I'm sure you know, and even if they tried, couldn't get, and if they did make it worse, they had to pay somebody a portion of that $2,100 to get that 3 fortnights, or maybe to stretch the envelope, so to speak, so as to put you on a little longer, so as to share that subsistence that you would be getting. I want to say that having regard to the disproportionate nature where few are getting 3/4 and you are part of the 1/4, and naturally will feel offended, will feel that you were robbed because that $2,100 for the year would have been taken away. Think about what the amount that those who were parasiting on the program, who were manipulating and corrupting to get unmeritorious benefit, how much that money that they would be pocketing could go towards potholes, ensuring that electricity rates does not increase, water rates does not increase. But in the case of the PNM, we had that happening, and the water rates were still increasing. Electricity was next, and the cost of living generally skyrocketing. While we see, on the other hand, a small group of persons benefiting from the largesse of the state. But there's another point with respect to that $2,100 I speak of, because I want you to know that that perception crafted by the PNM over the years to make you believe that that is a panacea, that that is an imperative, I want you to know that typically it is not. Because you cannot live on $2,100 for a whole 12 months, first and foremost. And I have argued this over and over, that while it is a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, to get that as part of the basket of resources or financial requirements across several different, what I consider to be efforts or activities that an individual will make or will engage in over the 12 months, certainly $2,100 would be just a portion, a small portion of the monies that you would require in order to go in order to survive the year. Yeah. And if you have not been conscious of it, let me break it down. Let me break it down. Tomorrow night I will do a specific scenario. I'll give you a hypothetical situation, but let's be practical. $2,100. Clearly, we have to agree that that will not work. Can't cover your rent for 12 months, can't cover your children's bill, you can't cover food, etc. for a whole, even for an individual, far less for a couple or an individual, because we have single parent families for a year, 12 months. So it means, therefore, be conscious. It has to be generally, and I can tell you that same household, they get money from to survive the 12 months from persons who may be working and making their contribution in the family. One, outside of the $2,100 I'm talking about. Two, many of these individuals have other jobs that they are doing, whether it be cleaning, whether it be emptying a container, etc. The men will know that. Whether it be engaging in some other activity that will bring in an additional dollar. Some may be in the private sector. Some go on vehicles and hustle by the hardware and so on. But while at the same time getting that $2,100, are trying to make the case that do not be lured, do not be deceived by the self-righteous indignation of those who are saying to you now, well, they take away CPEP and they take away, and making it look as though that was a perennial source of income, meaning that for the whole year. No. It was and in fact is a minuscule portion of the basket of income sources that you will depend upon to last out the year. A friend may come and give you $20, $100. Somebody get paid and they give you that. All of that is part and parcel. And they give you a portion of their earnings, etc. A number and a variety of sources. I know that. Lavantillion, I know. So the point I am making is that if the $2,100 was removed by from the genuine non-engaged individuals who would have been involved in URP, CPEP, and so on, I want you to be real. That is not the only source to last you for 12 months if it is that you were entitled to only 3 fortnights, as the case may be. I know for sure that is the rule as far as URP is concerned. CPEP contractors may be a little more flexible because they have a certain amount of autonomy and they probably could choose regulars, etc. But generally, people find other ways to augment the monies that are coming from CPEP, URP, forestry, etc. And don't tell me I don't know. And don't tell me that, of course, is wishful thinking. Because tomorrow I will give a typical scenario and bring people to witness to you what transpires. Not one of them. Many of them would have been on welfare. In addition, of course, to getting that additional, that CPEP, URP, and the forestry program would have brought to them. We know. So the point I am making, do not allow those vipers, those who would have led us to where we are today, in terms of the very strenuous engagement to try to not just rationalize but stabilize Trinidad and Tobago economically, so that we can, all of us could stand a better chance, particularly those in the impoverished and depressed communities. Because it is not for the existing adults. We are talking about our children, our children's children. Last July, something like 14 to 16,000 young people would have left school, on top of the 16 before, and so on and so forth. Every July, the end of the school year, to have an intake of another 16 at the kindergarten level, and at the what is called in the primary school, the first exposure to primary school. That 16,000 will now be replacing, in essence, those who are at the upper end, meaning that those who would have left the Form 5 in essence, and then the Form 4s will go up to Form 5, the 3s will go to 4, the 2s will go to 3, the 1s will go to 2, yes, and then of course the C battery of young people will now enter Form 1. That's the cycle, that's the system. And of course, at the primary level, we know 5-year-olds entering, of course, the primary school for the first time, whilst, of course, the C students leave the primary system at the upper end and go on into the secondary system at the lowest end, meaning in Form 1. That's the system we have. But at the upper end of the secondary, everybody who would have come in a particular year would be making their exit, because they would have completed their 5 years in the secondary system. Who, a very small portion from the statistics, will go on, and we will bring the statistics as well, that go on to advance, and then some of the advance will go on, of course, to tertiary or university. But I would hazard something like nearly 80%, so I'm being generous here, would have come to the end of their school days, leaving the Form 5 or the secondary system. And therefore, will be doing what? Either looking for some kind of employment, or looking to advance themselves, maybe in some vocational skill area, or going to business, as the case may be. And all of those options must also be available to those students, or those young people in communities such as East Port of Spain, Laventil, Beetham, Sealat as well. They must become conscious, so they play their role. Of course, we know, and that is what I will be, of course, addressing tomorrow as well. In the first, of course, in this new series, is the whole question of why would gang criminal behavior, borderline, be considered an option. I am saying that should be, if it was a person, I would say persona non grata, not acceptable. But because it is an action, I would want to say that it is not something that one should look forward to, or in any way, once there are mechanisms to prevent it from happening. So therefore, the whole question of prevention in criminology, and of course in the law enforcement world, it is called and in the sociological world as well, it is called the prophylactic approach, the preventative approach. And you will hear me, of course, very vociferous in terms of my condemnation of those who scuttled the opportunity for the first time to get a fellow like me and others who are like-minded as Bishop Burke. And of course, we have a lot of unsung heroes in the various communities, whether they engage in sports, football, cricket, education, etc., for the scuttling of the ZOSO bill that was defeated in the Senate. I say shame on the PNM and shame on the independent senators for not recognizing the importance of that section of the ZOSO bill that would have caused persons like myself to demand from the government, having regard to the fact that once a place or a community is designated as a ZOSO, a zone of what? Of special operation. In 5 days, a particular committee must be given the authority to demand from government matters of an infrastructural nature. God knows we need it. Children not going to school or not doing well in school, to address that matter. To address employment, a scarce commodity in these places for the young, the middle-aged, and for everybody else. The opportunity to have our people engage in business and therefore generating the very employment that is required in order for people to put food on their tables, and they therefore live a life that everybody aspire in this country. That is what was within the bowels, if you want to call it that, was enshrined in the ZOSO bill. You see, the advantage here is clear to me, and you may find me emotional at this point in time, but here it is. We had an opportunity where I could have said to the Ministry of Social Development, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Sports, the Ministry of Culture, etc. Listen, this is what we demand now that the area has been declared a zone of special operations. And it is not just a lining up, but a critical component, because remember, I will be doing those same things on my own. The big difference is this, that nothing stops those elements that would normally be the subject of police attention. I'm being very generous here. The subject of police attention from attacking me, and not attacking me physically. I don't expect to be attacked physically to say they go shoot me or to cut me or so. But that doesn't mean that they will not see a person like myself as an opportunity to say, Father, or whatever they call me, I want something to eat and this and that and so on. You see, the ZOSO bill would have had them distance, would have had them, those elements barricaded, so that I would be able to focus my attention on those developmental and those capacity building and those persons who are not so engaged, so that we begin the transformation process and the prophylactic approach that I've just mentioned. In other words, you have a curfew, so the law enforcement would have been focusing on the criminal elements whilst I get an opportunity to engage those who are not yet so engaged or who are not so engaged, so that we maximize and we optimize the ability and realize the ability of the community to emerge from the morass and the quagmire that it has found itself over the years. That is what ZOSO would have done, in my humble estimation, having regard to what is contained. I will read it for you tomorrow to let you see what the PNM and the independent senators have done to communities like these. So I am not daunted, I want to say, however, but at least that would have been a fillip to assist a fellow like me, and of course persons who are so inclined to remain here and to generate the paradigm shift, as I said earlier, or the metamorphosis and the change that is required in order to bring them up to scratch. No longer must we believe that we are third-class and fourth-class citizens, and no longer must, of course, international advisories against Trinidad and Tobago not only should we be on a mission to eliminate these advisories, these negative advisories, but also to avoid Nelson Street and Laventille and so on being mentioned in these advisories. You don't know that? Every citizen that comes here from Europe or from the United States or North America, which include Canada, and indeed, of course, our Caribbean neighbors, the advisories is a notice. It is a caution to their citizens. Listen, don't go to Trinidad. But if you have to go to Trinidad, mention in that, they tell their people, don't go Nelson Street, Laventille, Belmont, etc. Mentioned. We have a duty as residents to try to eliminate that. And why we must do it, why it is incumbent, why it is an imperative, why, of course, it is a sacred commitment that we all must have. Why? You see, the wiping out of that notion or those kinds of advisories against us will mean that more investment will come into Trinidad, and therefore the likelihood that the same guys in East Port of Spain, Laventille and so on will get a job because more is available. You know, there's something called overheating the economy. When things are so good that people could jump from job to job, and of course the labor market cotton style, because if you leave one here, you get a better one there, and people will want to pay more to keep you, or somebody else is prepared to pay more to have you. That is where we want to reach. That is where we want to go, so that there's a job for everyone once they are so inclined, and hopefully the type that they want. But when you have advisories against those persons who have the capital resources to invest here, whether in the private sector or in partnership or with the government or the public sector, they have the capacity, they're willing. But when they hear and when they see, because they're not stupid, they want to know who they're dealing with. They want to understand that when they're putting in their investment money, that they get the return, most importantly, that they're looking for, and they could leave with a profit, etc. But more importantly, that they will not die whilst they are, of course, attempting to augment and to generate the profit for their investors or the owners of their respective businesses. So we have a duty. It is unacceptable that you, in an advisory against Trinidad and Tobago at one time, of course, being known for the most terrorists per capita in the Western Hemisphere, all over CNN, all over Fox News, etc., all the networks, Trinidad and Tobago. When the ISIS scenario was at its peak or dominant. And then, of course, you have the other situation where when you look at the State Department, the United States State Department report, and other global fora that, of course, monitor governments and countries, and they say that Trinidad and Tobago is the sixth most violent country in the world. What does that mean for investors? And therefore, I would know, and you should know what it means for us here in Trinidad. Less investment, and therefore less opportunity for work. And I love, of course, the term overheating the economy. I love that too bad. But of course, that is the subject of another discussion. Because, of course, overheating ain't too good, so you have to balance it. Because you'll have inflation, and you have people saying, well, listen, I don't need your work, I can go to the next work, fine, okay. And when a fella say, listen, I only had 2 tin of milk, a fella say, listen, don't matter what price it is, just give me it. I'm paying for it because I have money. Because plenty money running behind a short supply of goods. Inflation is the term, yes. And so, of course, it's not good. So we have to learn in that scenario to save. And we have to learn as well to produce more. So you avoid the devaluation or the depreciation of your dollar in terms of exchange for goods and services. That is a matter that is crucial. Too often I see men saying, listen, no matter what, I'll go buy this drink for this amount, exorbitant. And of course, the businessman, unscrupulous as they may be. And of course, I suppose the system we have, laissez-faire capitalism, could be as rich as you want and as greedy as you want. But it also subscribe and take note of and promotes wise spending. Wise spending. Because it is said that a fool may make money, but it takes a wise man to spend it. A fool may make money, but it takes a wise man to spend it. And of course, a fool and his money soon parts. Because there is no law to say that you can make as much money as you can. There's no law to prevent you from becoming a pauper because you spend your money badly. So we have to be able to look at all of those variables, all of those dimensions. A serious business coming down the road here. We can no longer afford the luxury of incompetent, corrupt, self-serving individuals to manage the facilitation responsibility that a government in our system has an obligation to do. We cannot afford it. And so when you listen and you look at the current Prime Minister, you see an individual who is very conscious of those facts. You see very measured approaches You see balance. You see altruism. Whether it be, of course, the Children's Life Fund and the increasing thereof and the expanding of those medical circumstances that will cause one to access the program. And I'm just being selective here. I'm just being microcosmic here. Just taking one or two examples to give to you why the present administration is the best thing since, I'm going to say wrong, but I say sliced bread. I'm going that far, yes. And more so because the present opposition, the PNM, we have seen that all they are engaging is what I consider to be superficial, superfluous, phantasmagorical stories that has no relationship with reality, and more importantly, they castigate that which they instituted. They are the causative agent. How the hell, after 2 months, 3 months, you could make the bold statement as the opposition has done when the present administration had the responsibility of reading a budget, or even before that, and had to take certain what I consider to be critical measures to safeguard the cash flow and our reserves and the stabilization, or towards the stabilization of our credit rating, because these things will not go away, did not go away during the PNM. But to ask this stupid question that the government has no money, you spend out the money, you know, but the government, having won the election, suddenly you believe that the population is so dense, is so stupid, that they will not make a connection, a nexus between the dotishness you're talking and the accusation you're making and the assertion that somehow the present government wasn't able to make money in 3 months of their existence as a government to satisfy commitments that they either would have inherited or had promised on the election campaign, such as the 10% for public servants. They prefer, as they did in their conduct, faced with a similar situation in terms of rapidly reducing cash flows and money availability, they decide not to pay contractors. They decide to hold back VAT. Yeah. They decide to tell you, and they coin a different term. They say gazetted workers. They prefer to tell you what that meant is that they were laying off contracted workers. When they say gazetted, they mean that persons who essentially have come through, of course, the civil service system of employment recruitment and may or may not be attached, and usually they are attached to a trade union. Of course, in this case, usually the PSA. There are others, of course, but I'm just making the point. But the asinine and the what I consider to be the intellectually debased and somehow cognitively in decline a statement And you heard it. Don't pretend that you don't. Whether you are sycophant for the PNM or you are apologist, you have to face the reality. They had no money. Suggesting somehow that it was the UNC that created the condition of emasculation or the deficit or the depletion of resources. And why can we say that with confidence? You see, in 2015, when Rowley headed the PNM, after, of course, having a hollow victory, let me repeat, a hollow victory, both in 2015 and 2020, and we're going to come to that in specificity, but I want to say this. It was over 12 billion US in reserve it had in the treasury. And because they are so conniving and so deceptive and generates at will innuendos, misleading statements. Some of you will recall when Imbert was saying the country was running on fumes. And you take that to mean that the country had no money and that the UNC partnership was the reason for that. And notice up to today, they have not apologized. I talk about Imsbert, but go on, of course, to say today that the government has no money. After 10 years, having depleted the 12 billion that you met there in reserve, having attacked viciously the Heritage and Civilization Fund to get money. And by the time the 28th of April would have been upon us last year, that reserve was depleted to around $4 billion. That is my estimate. Some saying 5, but I prefer to say 4. But 3 months of import. Whereas they met over 12 months of import in 2015. You see, we have to be able to put things not just in perspective, but to allocate, if it is necessary, blame where blame is deserving, and give credit where credit is due, and then this by a discerning intellectual or common sense analysis, say who is talking hogwash, who is insincere, because we have seen a barrage, we have seen a over preponderance, we have seen a proclivity, a tendency of the PNM to concoct all kinds of phantasmagorical stories that at the end of the day, it turns out to be to our detriment. What am I specifically referring to? Look at the decision and the circumstances leading to that decision that caused the oil refinery to be in limbo, or put more specifically, in mothball. Mothball. Yeah, that's the term it's used. In fallow. Inoperative. What? Look at that. We had something like 3 reports, 3 assessments, upwards of $25 million. As a charge on the treasury of this country for these reports on what to do with Petrotrin. None of them talked about closing down of anything, far less the oil refinery. Yet still, a decision was made out of the blue. And the, what I consider to be lame duck excuse is that there was a 800 million bullet payment to be satisfied by the ensuing August. And therefore, mind you, that was one excuse, because the others that came, the most outstanding of them is that, listen, we closed down the oil refinery because it was losing money. When we pay for 100,000 barrels that it was consuming to have it viable, we were losing $7 to $8 US on every barrel. Yes. From the bullet payment scenario to now you close it down deliberately. Mind you, against a background that none of the reports talked about that. And I want to go further so that you understand what we are dealing with, one, and two, the level of what I consider to be criminal behavior in public office. Let me repeat. What I believe to be criminal behavior in public office. Because after the oil refinery was closed, and then now they're looking for sale. And Patriotic, of course, owned by the OWTU, came, of course, to say, but listen, we are here ready, willing, able, and have the financial wherewithal. And having said to the population that OWTU, if they want it, so it appears that they want to give it free at that point in time. But clearly all that was talk in order to pacify and to placate the immediate stakeholders and the general public. That imposition, when Rowley came on the nation's media and talked that the decision was made to close Petrotrin and therefore to generate the disruption that we would have seen. You see, when they got their way and Patriotic through the OWTU took up the challenge, they then told them up to the 2020 election. Hold on now. We'll get. And when they achieved the second term, they then tell OWTU, including, and just to make sure that there is no return, just to make sure that they rub salt in their wounds. They said, listen, the documents were bogus. You heard, Short Young. The documents were bogus. But you know, in the incarnation before the 2020 general elections, and when there was, of course, no need to, as yet, to get back into office, they said, big statement in Parliament by Imsbert. Listen, Patriotic has been given first preference and so on. So much so that they preferred upfront payment, and we ain't taking it. We want them to keep that money so that they could invest well and everybody swallowed that. Even, of course, OWTU. Or even OWTU. And by the time the second election came around, 2020, they were telling Petrotrin, hold on, there's a lot of documents and so on that we have to rifle through and we have to examine and so on. And there is this, of course, cabinet-appointed committee to look at the matter. Suggesting, not so subliminally, but with a great deal of expectation that OWTU's preference would have been granted, because they were led to believe that, as we, the population, would have. And at the end of the day, they said nothing for you, including, of course, your documents were bogus. Yeah. That is what transpired, people. But the original reason for the closure, we had to make now an assessment. We had the situation with the fake oil. Remember that? The opposition then, now government raised that. They had to look at that. Fake oil matter. We had to look as well as to the pulling out of the court, Malcolm Jones's matter. And the very man, because these are dangerous people. That is why I could talk about criminal behavior in the context of what transpired between 2015 and the 28th of April 2025. The same man who gave the UNC the all clear by way of a legal opinion, Vincent Nelson, to pursue Malcolm Jones. And that was, in fact, entrained. The same man who eventually, according to the dictum, boy, people, of course, you will see the notice, no calls. I can't make. All right, let me try again. Professor, good night. Can't make. It's happening. Hello? Are you hearing me?
Hello?
Are you hearing me? See, yeah, I'm not getting all here. Good night. Tell me. No call. Can't make. I'm not hearing. You not hearing. I hearing you. So I'm hearing you, but you are not hearing me. So we have to do something about the audio for tomorrow, of course, because we have to get all the calls in. But just want to make the point, because what we have though, we have much more time here. It's 9. Oh, after 9 already, boy. I thought we were finishing close, or just after 9. But let me close here. That the matter of that opinion that they got from Malcolm Jones to withdraw, they got from, let me reconstitute my thoughts. The opinion that they got from Vincent Nelson to withdraw the Malcolm Jones matter from the court was questioned by the Privy Council. And they were flabbergasted, and that is my interpretation, as to the volume of money that could be the subject of a simple paragraph to withdraw that matter. And we have the information, so we could defend it and prove it if it becomes necessary. But the fact of the matter is that too would have played a vital role in the deception and the conspiracy and the engagement in criminal behavior. And in essence and in specificity, I'm talking about misbehavior in public office, corruption in public office. That's what I'm talking about, when I say criminal behavior. And then even when an investigation was launched into the fake oil matter, that too was scuttled effectively promoting and evoking the perversion of the criminal justice system by the way that the PNM handled that investigation. Why am I saying so? Because I cannot, for the love of me and for moral and ethical and possibly legal, you see how Rowley could take his personal lawyer and make him, of course, chairman of the holding company that would have had of necessity to cooperate with the police in the investigation of the fake oil matter. Cannot. But yes, he did it, and not for the first time. We saw how he manipulated, of course, the Police Service Commission and the chairman that caused, of course, the entire commission to resign because of his intrusive, self-serving, corrupt interventions. So I am not in any way obligated to recognize the nonsense that the PNM is engaged in today. So we have started, of course, from URP, CPEP, and so on, come right back down, of course, to why it is that the toxicity of the PNM cannot be neutralized. Yeah, there is no antidote for that. And we have to be extremely careful. Why am I saying so? And I'll conclude with this. We have a local government elections coming up. I know that people are disappointed. But if on the balance of it, and on the arguments and the information that is placed before you, and you allow these people to get a foothold by way of electoral fortune, we would have been doing a disservice to ourselves. And so I am concluding by saying we must get the Port of Spain Corporation. We must get the Diego Martin Corporation. We must get the, and rustle from them, the San Juan Laventil Regional Corporation from the PNM. They must be relegated to the dustbin of political history, as we have seen in real time and in actualization by the Tobagonians in they're going into the elections, the THA elections, the last one, with one seat. The PNM going with one seat and lost that too. Lost that too. All 15 going to the current party, the TPP, Tobago People's Party. I, for one, will be discussing with, of course, the coalition partners, and therefore love Laventil Outreach for Vertical Enrichment, of which I am the political leader, with my other coalition partners that have an interest in this part of the corridor, to ensure that the totality of what is deserving to the PNM goes to them in terms of jettisoning them out of these corporations, so that we can deliver to the burgesses and the electorate what they were deprived of by a marauding bunch of opportunistic political parasites under the umbrella of something called the PNM. And we only have to look at Balize House as a microcosm of not just the profligacy, not just the corruption, not just the waste, and not just the nepotism, not just political aggrandizement and self-serving disposition, but also to ensure that communities in these electoral districts and or corporations begin the process of transformation in their own best interests. Because the very toxic relationship and the inculcation of evil and accepting mediocrity, whilst the PNM go away with the ham, lamb, and jam, can no longer be countenanced. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. See you tomorrow. As I said, with the new, we'll start at around 5:30 with Joshua at the helm, so to speak. I'll be asking some questions and so on, taking a minor role, whilst he takes, of course, the major role. And I want to tell you, of course, for some of you who don't know, I'm sure he's going to boast tomorrow because he has a gift from the president. Remember, before we left, he had written to the president. Well, she did visit his school. Yes, people, look forward to it. Young people, you could do it too. And of course, I'm sure he will present his gift that he got from the president. Tomorrow, look forward to that. All right, and of course, I think recently he wrote to the Commissioner of Police, who already has responded, inquiring of a number for his school so that the visit can materialize because of his concern with respect, of course, to the SOE and the conduct or non-conduct or the purpose for these measures that are being taken, and his bird's eye view as to how it operates on the ground, how it unfolds in a community such as East Port of Spain, Laventon, Beetham, Sealats, etc. So look forward to that. I'm not going to say any more. I think I gave away too much. But have a wonderful one. And of course, let's end with, of course, a piece from Sparrow. As per usual, we like to give some patriotic, but I think we could go back to some nostalgia here.
Well, it's Gina and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina, round the corner posing, that your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broke, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a run. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over. Ah, Gina and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina, round the corner posing, that your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broke, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a run. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over now. Well, the girls in town feeling bad. No more Yankees in Trinidad. They're gonna close down the base for good. Them girls have to make out how they could. Hey, brother, now they park up in town. In for a penny and in for a pound. Believe me, it's competition. So travel in the town when the price drop low. So when you bounce up Gina and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina, round the corner posing, that your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broke, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a run. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over. is to see how the cavemen come into town just to meet Miss Jean and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina. Round the corner posing, but your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broken, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a run. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over. Ah, Jean and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina. Round the corner posing, bet your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broken, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a run. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over now. It's the glamour boys again. We are going to rule Port of Spain. No more Yankee to spoil the fete. Dorothy had to take where she get. All of them who used to make style, they get 2 shillings with a smile. No more hotel to rest your head. By the sweat of thy brow, thou shalt eat bread. Mama, you is Jean and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina. Round the corner posing, bet your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broken, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a wrong. The Yankees gonna Sparrow take over. Ah, Jean and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina. Round the corner.
Now is the time to rebuild. Make up your mind to climb the hill.
It's reconstruction time in Trinidad, so put your shoulder to the wheel, my lad, move on, don't stop till you reach the top. You put a hand and I put a hand and we will see. For big and for small in no time at all, prosperity.